The Rothesay-class, also known as the Type 12M class, was created for performing anti-submarine warfare, shortly ASW missions on the oceans. Besides the UK, these frigates served three other nations: Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. Today, we're investigating the Rothesay-class, one of the most successful and beautiful British warships. The Rothesay-class was a first-rate ocean-going ASW frigate designed to fight against Soviet submarines. Even though it never fulfilled its creation purpose, this class of surface combatants fought gallantly against Argentina in 1982. The President class of the South African Navy and the first four of the Riva class of the Royal Australian Navy were also the Rothesay-class vessels. The letter M of the Type 12M, the other name of the Rothesay-class, was already the initial of the word modified. So, the Rothesay-class was essentially a modified variant of the Whitby-class, also known as the Type 12 class. The Whitby-class frigates were first-rate ocean-going convoy escorts designed in the light of experience gained during the Second World War. The Rothesay-class was created to accompany fast naval fleets. London approved the construction of 13 Rothesay-class frigates under the 1954-55 program. The first of its class, HMS Rothesay, was laid down on November 6, 1956, launched on December 9, 1957, and commissioned on April 23, 1960. But the first Rothesay-class frigate that entered the Royal Navy service, HMS Yarra, was commissioned on March 26, 1960. Even though the Royal Navy planned to commission 13 Rothesay-class frigates, it took 9 of them into the service. One ship was sold to Royal New Zealand Navy, and 3 others were completed as the Leander class. The hull design of the Rothesay-class, which was inherited from the Whitby-class, allowed for maintaining a high cruising speed on heavy seas. The highly raised forecastle did not only cut through the water, but also the spray was thrown upwards and outwards away from the bridge and gun turret. The forecastle had a distinctive king because of the large and heavy 114mm Mark VI gun. It had to be carried low to maintain stability and give a good view from the bridge. The Rothesay-class had an enlarged raked and streamlined funnel, while its predecessor, the Whitby-class, had a retractably fitted one. All welded hull and superstructure reduced the weight. The arrangement of the engine room machinery was considered outstandingly good at its time. The ship had new 5-bladed low cavitation propellers. They provided fuel efficiency and low acoustic signature, which made the Rothesay-class a perfect high-speed and all-weather ASW vessel. Thanks to its twin rudders, the ship also had good maneuverability. Initially, the frigate had the same armament as its predecessor. So, except for their funnels, the Rothesay and Whitby classes were almost identical. The real change came with a modernization program implemented between 1966 to 1972. In the 1960s, helicopters, which offered an extended range ASW operation capability to naval ships, reached maturity. Thus, the Royal Navy modified its Rothesay-class frigates to carry Westland Wasps, which could carry homing torpedoes and a dipping sonar. A flight deck and hangar were built on the stern during the modernization. When the Rothesay-class had been commissioned, it had 2 Limbo ASW mortars and 1 single or twin-barrel 40mm anti-aircraft gun at the stern. Due to the installation of aviation facilities, the 40mm gun and one of the Limbos were removed. Initially, the Royal Navy had already planned to equip these frigates with Seacats. But at that time, this air defense missile system had not been ready yet. The Rothesay-class lost this 40mm gun, but finally got the quadruple Seacat launcher mounted onto the hangar. The ships were also fitted with 2 single-barrel 20mm guns. Initially, the Royal Navy had planned to equip these frigates with 4 fixed torpedo tubes. However, a suitable weapon was never developed. Thus, only some ships had been fitted with these torpedo tubes, which were eventually removed. The modernization also included electronics. The MRS-3 fire control system replaced the Mark VI-M. The ASW capability of the Rothesay-class improved by the Type 177 search and Type 199 variable depth sonars. Besides, the frigates were fitted with the Type 993 for short-range anti-aircraft search and Type 978 surface search radars, the Type 1010 Kossor Mark 10 IFF, and the Nebworth Corvus countermeasures launchers. Due to these changes, the internal electricity generation capacity of the frigate was also increased. Besides, the accommodation standards of the Rothesay-class were improved with partial bunking and air conditioning. Later, HMS Rothesay and HMS Plymouth were fitted with the Type 994 short-range warning radar and a new target indicator in 1978 and 1981, respectively. The complement of the Rothesay-class was 235 persons. Its standard displacement was 2,380 tons, while its fully loaded displacement was 2,800 tons. The ship had a length of 112.8 meters, a beam of 12.5 meters, and a draught of 5.3 meters. Two 15,000 horsepower Babcock-Wilcox Y100 oil-fired boilers and geared steam turbines provided a top speed of 30 knots. The ship could reach a range of 9,630 kilometers, in other words 5,200 nautical miles, at an economical speed of 12 knots. The Rothesay-class had one 114mm twin-barrel Mark 6 gun, two 20mm Oerlikon guns, and one quadruple Seacat air defense missile launcher, and one Limbo anti-submarine warfare mortar. The Royal New Zealand Navy ordered two Rothesay-class frigates in February 1957. They had air conditioning and bunks for the crew instead of hammocks. These frigates were fitted with the Seacat missiles by 1964. Initially, they had the Mark 20 heavyweight anti-submarine torpedo launching capability, but abandoned them in the mid-1960s. They were equipped with two 324mm triple Mark 32 torpedo tubes in 1971. The Limbo mortars were removed at major refits in July 1974. HMNZS Taranaki was refitted for a training and fisheries role in 1979, and its Seacat missile system and height-finding radar were removed. The New Zealand Rothesay-class frigates never had aviation facilities. South Africa ordered three Rothesay-class frigates as a part of the Simonstown Naval Agreement. They were named after presidents of the Boer republics, so the South African Navy defined them as the President class. Unlike the Rothesay-class frigates of the Royal Navy, they retained the 40mm gun and were never equipped with the Seacat missiles after modernization. The President-class vessels were fitted with aviation facilities for the Wasp helicopters and two 324mm Mark 32 triple torpedo tubes, and their Limbo mortars were removed. Also, their electronics were upgraded, including the addition of a Thomson CSF Jupiter early warning radar atop a new mainmast. Unlike her sisters, SAS President Kruger retained her original fire control system. SAS President Pretorius was refitted during the early 1980s to lay mines and operate assault boats. The first four ships of the Riva class of the Royal Australian Navy were a modified variant of the Rothesay class, while the last two were the Leander class. They were built in Australia. This country, which had initially defined them as ASW frigates, redefined these vessels as escort destroyers later. The Riva class had a different fire control system, air warning radar, and improved habitability compared to the Rothesay class. HMAS Stuart and HMAS Derwent were modified to carry the Type 199 variable depth sonar over the stern, but this sonar was found unsuccessful and later removed. During the 1960s, the four Rothesay-class based ships were fitted with a quadruple Seacat anti-aircraft missile launcher, and the Ikara ASW missile launcher replaced one of the Limbo mortars. They had no aviation facilities. HMS Brighton served in the Far East, carrying out anti-infiltration patrols during the Indonesia-Malaysia confrontation in 1965. HMS Rothesay, HMS Yarmouth, HMS Plymouth, and HMS Falmouth served in the Cod War caused by fishery rights dispute between the UK and Iceland. On February 28, 1976, HMS Yarmouth collided with ICGV Ballidur stern severely damaging the frigate's bow. On May 6, 1976, HMS Falmouth rammed ICGV Tier and almost capsized her. Both vessels suffered severe structural damage. On March 19, 1969, the UK launched Operation Sheepskin to restore British rule in Anguilla. Alongside HMS Minerva, HMS Rothesay served in the naval task force of this operation. Alongside HMS Antrim, HMS Brilliant, and HMS Endurance, HMS Plymouth took part in the recapture of South Georgia during Operation Parramatta, a part of the 1982 Falklands War. On April 25, her Wasp helicopter took part in an attack on ARA Santa Fe. It claimed one hit on the waterline of ARA Santa Fe with an AS-12 missile. Then, alongside HMS Antrim, HMS Plymouth provided naval gunfire support for the British landing force. Both ships fired 235 shells until the Argentinian troops surrendered. On June 8, HMS Plymouth was attacked by 5 Argentine daggers. The aircraft scored 4 1,000-pound bomb hits, all of which failed to detonate. Still, they caused extensive damage. HMS Plymouth withdrew to a repair area and could not return to her duties until June 14. On May 1st, alongside HMS Brilliant, HMS Yarmouth participated in the 20-hour unsuccessful hunting effort for the Argentine submarine ARA San Luis. 3 days later, HMS Yarmouth provided anti-submarine protection in the area during the firefighting efforts for the HMS Sheffield, which was hit by an Exocet missile. On May 21st, she rescued the crew of HMS Ardent, hit by an Argentine Skyhawks. On May 23rd, alongside HMS Brilliant, she intercepted and engaged the Argentine coaster ARA Monsanen with her 114mm guns. 2 days later, HMS Yarmouth claimed to have shot down an A4C Skyhawk with her Seacat missile system. However, land-based Rapier or blowpipe missiles or naval gunfire may have shut down this aircraft. On June 12, HMS Yarmouth also gave firefighting and medical assistance to HMS Glamorgan, which was hit by a land-based Exocet. She fired over 1,000 shells from her main guns and 58 Limbo ASW rounds during the war. SAS President Kruger patrolled off the Angolan coast during the South African border war beginning in November 1975. She sank after colliding with the replenishment ship SAS Toffelbeck during an ASW exercise on February 18, 1982. SAS President Steyn played a minor role in Operation Savannah, the South African covert intervention in the Angolan Civil War. In 1964, HMAS Yarra and HMAS Parramatta escorted the troop transport HMAS Sydney, which delivered Australian military units and supplies during the Indonesia-Malaysia confrontation. In 1965, HMAS Yarra fired an Indonesian incursion force near Sabah. Starting in that year, HMAS Parramatta escorted HMAS Sydney's voyages to South Vietnam several times. In 1966, HMAS Derwent was deployed to Malaysia. She intercepted many civilian ships attempting to transport Indonesian soldiers to Malaysia. HMAS Derwent returned to Tawau for guardship duties and fired on Indonesian targets 3 times in March. 1 month later, the ship provided naval gunfire support to ground forces 4 times. The same year, HMAS Derwent escorted HMAS Sydney's 4th voyage to South Vietnam. In 1981, HMS Brighton became the first decommissioned Rothesay-class frigate. When HMAS Derwent retired in 1994, the legend ended. The Rothesay-class was one of the most successfully designed and sexiest warships of the First Cold War. It was a true legend, leaving its mark on the history of 4 navies. Thanks for watching our video, and please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell button to be notified of our new videos. Also, you can now click the join button to support our channel. And as always, we would greatly appreciate all of your likes, comments, and shares.